privileges.
There we go. So, yeah, so forgot to record. Basically what I said was, to get started in the class, we need VS Code and we need Node installed. And the first thing we're going to do is command line, basic command line stuff, a JavaScript refresher, and how to start our first project. Not in that order, but cool. So once everyone's done downloading their stuff, go ahead and post in the chat. I don't even know who else needs all their stuff.
Do you want us to put like a thumb up if we have everything downloaded?
Thumb up would be great if it lasted more than a few seconds.
Oh.
Cool. All
Also,
right.
I see just Tejas. I think we're waiting on him.
Just who?
Tejas.
Oh, Tejas. Okay. I can't see.
Yeah, I'm installing Node right now.
Cool.
Oh.
Let us know when you're done, I think. And Bella, you have, did you get Node? Is that how I always say that name? Also, Tejas, that is how you pronounce your name, right?
It's Tejas.
Tejas. All right, roger that. I'm gonna turn my video off because no one else has their video on. I feel awkward. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and start sharing my screen. All right. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Sweet. So, while you're wrapping up Node, so command line, if you're, like I said, if you're on a Windows, open up PowerShell. You should be able to search for it in the lower right or lower left search bar. And for a Mac, you can use, I'm using iTerm2, but you can also use terminal. It's going to be the same set of commands. And I've done some fancy stuff with my terminal. So mine's going to look a little different than yours, but it's the same thing. So who hasn't used the command line before?
I haven't.
Okay.
Neither have I.
Me neither.
Sounds good. All right. So we're only going to use a few fairly basic commands in the command line, and I'll go ahead and write these up for your reference and post them in the advanced channel. So right now I'm at the home directory, and you can tell by this tilde character. When you open a command line and you change folders, you'll be able to see where the focus is on the left side. It'll probably say whatever your username is, and then this is just my work computer thing. There will be the tilde indicating that it's your home directory. So what I mean by home directory is when I open Finder, is that I don't remember what my name is on this computer. This is a new computer, it's my work computer. But when I open Finder, or on Windows, when you open
Explorer.
I'm a Mac guy. When you open Explorer and you go to your home directory, the one that's named after your username, it's under users. And I don't even know what mine is on this machine, but that's what your home directory is. So from here, you'll usually be able to see, and this is the first command, ls. That stands for list. So you should see all your folders in your home directory. And typically that's going to be desktop, documents, downloads, on a Mac, pictures, movies, library, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the first command, list. And whatever folder you're in, you can use, and it'll show all the folders and all the files that are in those folders. So when I go to my desktop, I don't know why it asked for that permission, but CD is the second command I just used. That stands for change directory. So you type CD space and the name of the folder that you want to navigate into. And you can see that on the left side, tilde, my home directory, desktop, that's where I'm at right now. So if I ls in here, I'm going to see, well, screenshots I took for work and a document for getting out of work. But this shows, and I can't remember how this works on PowerShell exactly, but typically on a Mac at least, our folders, our directories is what I'm going to be referring to them as. They're going to be in this blue color. They might be a different color for you. I'm not really sure what settings I changed here, but they'll be a different color than these files here. So you could tell that they're files. They'll also have, of course, the file extensions. To go back to the home directory, no matter what directory I'm in, I'm just going to go to a random place. So documents, what else is even here? Wallpaper. So if I want to go to the home directory right away, I can just type CD without giving any arguments, enter, and you can see I'm on the tilde. I'm back at my home directory. So that's a quick way to get back. Now, if you're in a folder, and I'll go back to documents. Yeah. By the way, I'm hitting tab to autocomplete, so you don't have to type out documents every time you do this. You can type the partial word and hit tab and it'll autocomplete for you. Tell me to slow down if I'm going too fast. And I want to go to wallpaper. So maybe I'm in the wallpaper directory. I want to go back to the documents directory. To do that, I would type cd ... and that would move me back up one directory. So hopefully this is pretty simple. The way I'm explaining it makes sense. But essentially, as far as regular command line stuff, this is really all you need. The rest of it is going to be npm scripts, which we'll get into. Oh, and I also forgot mkdir. So mkdir. This is to create a brand new folder. And yeah, you could do this in Windows Explorer /Finder / whatever Linux uses, but switching between applications is kind of a pain when you do this all day long. So the mkdir command, that's make directory, will create a new folder. And I'm going to name this one BD. I don't want to be in documents. So pick a spot on your computer where you want all of these projects to live. If you have them living all in the same place, then that's ideal. And that's going to be what some IDs will call your workspace. This is where all your projects live. And for me, that's conveniently named the projects folder. So now I'm in my projects folder. I'm going to make a new directory called BDPA. I'm going to use, so what command can I use to show all of the folders in the current directory? Anyone? Don't use the chat. I can't see it. I need to hear your voices.
ls.
LS. Cool. So LS, I can confirm, and I see it on the far left side, that I have created a new folder. So now I'm going to CD into the BDPA folder. LS again, it's empty. So from here, we're going to create a brand new project. And I assume you're done with installing Node. So if you are, and you've been following along, and your installation completed while you were in the command line, you're going to have to close it out and open it again, because the command line only loads what's already installed at open. So if I were to install Node right now and then try this command, it would not work. So go ahead and close it out, PowerShell or BAT or terminal, and open it again. Go to your folder that you want to save this stuff at, and then type in this command. So this command, and this is a common command between almost all programs that are available on the command line. It's -v as in Victor, that is version. So node -v. I'm going to confirm that Node is installed and I'm running the right version. Of course I'm not. So this command you won't have to worry about, because I'm using Node 12 for another project at work that I don't want to be using it. Anyway, so if you type in node-v, you're going to see, you'll probably see 16 point whatever, yeah, 16.14. So I'm actually still behind. You don't need to keep this updated like all the time, really, unless it's a security update. But we'll get into how to update later once maybe a new version comes out so we can actually do it. Because right now it would be kind of useless for all you to do an upgrade when you already have the latest. But Node-V, you can use that with almost every other program that is available on the command line. For this class, we're really only going to be using Node and NPM. And as for NPM, that should have been downloaded with your version of Node. This is the Node package manager, and we're going to make a lot of use of this. So not only is NPM package manager, and what that means is if we want to use code that someone else wrote and integrate it into our project, things like what we'll get into Super Agent or Axios, same thing, Material UI, all that fun stuff, we're going to be using NPM to grab that for us. NPM is also a script runner. So if you have a complicated script that you want to run for your project, and examples include compiling, like if you're using TypeScript, which we may talk about later in the course, starting the project so you could actually run it, etc. You might want to make an NPM script. And again, I'm getting a little further ahead, and some of you, I might as well be speaking Japanese right now, but you'll understand this as we go along the course. But do the same thing with NPM to verify that you got it on board, NPM-V. So I got version 8. I don't really know what version I'm supposed to have with 16, but it'll work either way. So another console command is clear. This will get rid of all of this noise that's above and clear my console for me if I don't want to read all of that stuff. And another thing, if you run a command that you want to run a second time, you don't have to type that command in all over again. Right now, I am pressing the up arrow on my keyboard. That is going through my bash history, or on PowerShell, I don't know what they call it, but PowerShell history. And you can rerun commands or see what command you ran before, which I use frequently because I put commands in wrong and I have to change them, and I don't want to type the whole thing out again. So yeah. And another thing that I've seen people attempt to do and it doesn't work, the command line doesn't know anything about your mouse. So if I were to go ahead and type in like cd dot, I don't know. I'll just go to the home directory, cd projects, bpda, I'm spelling that wrong on purpose. If I want to edit a command, I'm clicking, but the cursor is not moving. I have to use the arrow keys. So that's just something to keep in mind. So like I said, I'm going to write all that out for you because I don't expect you to have everything memorized right now. I mean, that's not a whole heck of a lot, but yeah, so I'll type all that out and post it in the advanced web channel after the class so you can see what each command is and what it does. Now there's another command. This is not part of bash. This is actually an NPM command. So we're going to create our first project. So we want each of our projects to live in their own folders, right? So we're going to make a directory, mkdir, and I'm just going to call this one week 1. You can call it whatever you want. So I made that directory. Now I'm going to cd into it, and I'm going to create or initialize a new project. And when I say initialize, there's a file that we're going to be using called the package.json, and that will detail everything we need to know about our project. Excuse me. That will show everything about our project that we would need to know. It's going to have a list of all of the Node modules that Node Package Manager downloaded that the project needs to run. So that if I create a project, I have a bunch of dependencies and I send it to Richa with the package JSON in there. If she tries to run it, she's not going to be able to because she doesn't have all of those third-party packages on her machine yet. She has to do something, tell NPM to download all of it, and then she'll be able to run it on her machine with the exact versions of those packages that I'm using. So maybe it's an older project and I need the older versions of those packages, etc. So I'm going to create that now, and there's two commands to do this. One of them just says yes to everything. So npm init, INIT. Enter. It's going to walk me through a bunch of questions to get started. The first one will be package name, and it autofills week 1 because it goes off the name of the folder it's in. I hit enter. Version 1.0.0 sounds good to me. Enter. Description, first project. Don't really need anything there. Entry point, index.js. That's fine by me. That's probably what I'm gonna name it anyway. Test command, we don't have one yet. Git repository, nada. Keywords, don't care. Author, me. License, ISC. I don't know what it stands for, but that's probably an open source license. So it's good enough for me. And now it's going to show me the initial package JSON that it's going to create. And it's going to ask me if it's correct. And I'll just hit enter. Boom. We now have a package JSON. And we'll get into what that means in a moment. But the other command, and I'll just, this is another command we're not going to use as much, but rm space dash rf, commonly referred to as rimraf, that deletes a file. So I want to delete this package JSON. Don't do this. I'm doing it to show you something. But rimraf deletes the package. It doesn't even send it to your, so this is kind of a dangerous command because it doesn't send it to your recycle bin. It just deletes it. So I wouldn't use this for something that you're not absolutely sure you want to get rid of, but I'm going to do the same thing again with npm init, but I'm going to put in -y. So -y, those are, I forgot to mention this. There's command line arguments. And sometimes they're only separated by a space. So npm init. And then there's, what are these called? Flags. A flag is a -v or a -y, and that tells you, well, flags can have a number of different uses. Sometimes -y just says, this is the mode I want you to use. In this case, -y is going to say yes to all of these all at once, so I don't have to click through each and every one of them. Boom. I didn't have to answer any questions this time. There's other ones, but again, we'll get into that, especially when we get into Git. We're going to be using flags a little bit more. But for now, you don't need to know too much about it. So I've got my package JSON. Now, if you just downloaded VS Code today, you may not have this command. You have to explicitly enable it. But I want to open VS Code to start, coding stuff out. And I'm already in that directory in this command line here, so I can do this. You may not be able to. Code and then a period. Period usually means the folder that we're currently in, by the way. So I want to open the current folder with code. Again, this may not work for you. If you're on a Mac, it might actually, but if you're on a Windows, it probably won't. So instead, you'll just have to open VS Code, file, open folder, and then navigate to that folder that you just created to house this first project. So let me know once you have VS Code open and you can see the package JSON. And then I'll walk you through how to enable that command that I just used, which I haven't done in a while. So actually I may have to look it up. Oh, hey, it's right there. Cool.
Mike, did you already answer Gracie's question?
I can't see the chat.
She's saying, is Node version 14 good, or do I need to update it?
14 should be good. There's some stuff in JavaScript that I may use that may not work with 14, but if that happens, then we can just get you upgraded. 14 should be fine. There's some cool JavaScript goodies that I may show you how to use. And I don't know what version they were introduced. So I'm not hearing anyone tell me to stop. So I'm gonna show you, this is how you enable the shell command. So you can open code from the command line. On a Mac, you're gonna hold down Command-Shift-P. On a Windows, I think it's Control-Shift-P. So if you're on a Windows and that worked, let me know.
It worked for me.
It did.
Awesome. BEA beautiful. So the first thing that you should see, and if you don't, you can start typing install code command in path. But if you click this, then it should enable the code command in your command line. Yay. So mine was already there, so that did absolutely nothing for me. But for you, that'll enable that command. And again, you may have to restart your shell for it to work. I don't really know. It's in the path, so maybe you don't. But if it doesn't work, that's why. If you close and reopen it and you try again, it should do it for you. So VS Code has some plugins that we're going to want to use. By default, it does already do stuff with JavaScript, but there's some more plugins that I want to introduce y'all that will help you tremendously. And some of them are required. So on the left side, there's these buttons. This one is the Explorer. So this is, showing all the folder or files and folders that are in this folder. There's search. So if I, use this search for week 1, week 1, then it'll show all of the results of that. And, we only have one file here, so that wasn't useful at all, but that's what that is. Source control, we are going to get to that later, but this is where we're going to start using Git. And you can use Git either from VS Code itself or from the command line. I'm going to show you both. I typically use, VS Code for almost everything Git, and my teammates at Asherian make fun of me for that. But yeah, it's really up to you. It's built out to the point where you don't need to use the command line for it if you don't want to. Run and debug, we'll get into this later, but as the name suggests, we can run a project and we could set breakpoints, which we'll go over probably today, I don't know. So you can see what your variables are storing if something isn't working the way you think it's supposed to. So this will become very useful, and it's my best friend. It's the reason I still have a job. And the last one is extensions. So extensions are one of the things that I really love about VS Code. And this is kind of a plug, but one of the things I love about VS Code is that I can build it out to what I need it to be. So IntelliJ, NetBeans, when you run those, first of all, they take forever to spin up. And there's a lot of stuff. They're fully featured. They're great tools, but they've got all sorts of stuff that really bogs your computer down. Because it's running a bunch of stuff that you may not even need or use. Whereas VS Code, it's literally just a text editor. It doesn't even have a compile button like you've probably seen before. You have to do everything from the command line, unless you can find an extension that lets you not do that. But because of that, it's super lightweight. I only have these installed things. These are what I decided I needed. And I could add one for Docker, because actually I do need that, among other things. But I'm building out VS Code with the features that I need it to have, which is awesome. So I've got this theme, and you're going to see a different theme on yours by default, but there's all sorts of different, ways to what's it called? Syntax color? Syntax highlighting. Syntax highlighting is, when you type in a variable name and then you assign it a value, the variable name and the value are going to have two different colors. That's what syntax highlighting is, if you're not familiar with the term. And you can choose your colors. There's some that are pre-made for you. There's a way to make a custom one. For instance, if you're colorblind, then maybe the default one just ain't going to work for you, so you got to find another one. Docker, we're not going to talk about Docker in this class, but Docker is really cool. Definitely look up Docker on your own time. env, we might use this, but it's not required. But env is something that I'll talk about later. But if you search for the extensions that I have listed on the screen, and I'll take a screenshot and post it in the advanced web channel as well, download every one of these. The one that I would say is required is probably going to be ESLint. That's a loose requirement, but you want your code to be pretty readable and professional. ESLint will help you with that. So that if you put in like an extra tab, ESLint will take care of that for you. Get rid of that extra tab. Git blame is something that I use. And as the name suggests, if I highlight a line of code and I want to know who wrote this. Who can I ask and question their skill set, because this code sucks, right? I can use git blame, highlight it. It'll tell me on the bottom left, if we're using Git, which we're not yet, but it'll say who wrote this line. So if I have a question on something, then I know who to ask or who to blame. Prettier, we don't really need it. It's the same thing as ESLint. Well, there are differences. Nat would scream at me for saying that they're the same thing, but they're very similar. It's another code formatter, but it does it in a different way. And it's got different features than ESLint does, but you only need the one. I mean, that's pretty much it. There's also custom icons. So if you don't like the way the icons look, then you can look for new ones. And I don't even know how many of them are on the marketplace. There's so many, and they're all free. I think they're all free. Most of them are free. But yeah, those are the extensions you need. Again, I'll take a screenshot of these and post them in Advanced Web. If you didn't download all these yet, then don't worry about it. So now we are on the package JSON. So we'll actually revisit the package JSON. We're going to do some JavaScript refresher now. So to create a new file in VS Code, you can either hit this button or right click new file, name it index.js. Excuse me. And this is the entry file that package JSON also has, but it doesn't actually list that. So I guess if there's no entry file, then it's default index.js. But again, that's not going to matter because we're going to write a custom script to run this. But for now, we'll just make some code. So to assign a variable, and again, this is going to be a refresher, not to insult anybody's intelligence here, but we're going to talk about assigning variables, what the different ways to assign variables are, different data types, etc. So first data type, or rather, one way to assign variables is using const. The other way is using let. And well, there's three. I don't know which one's newer, to be completely honest. I never use let or var. I almost exclusively use const, and I'll talk about why in a minute. But const is, if you've ever worked with another language that has types, you would normally have to type int or string or whatever, but JavaScript doesn't care about what the type is. It's a weakly typed language. So that is both good and bad. I like it better. Some people hate it, but a constant also means that once you set the variable, it can't change. Why did that happen? Once you set a variable, it can't change. Let and var are what are called mutable variables. That means that they can be changed afterwards. And in a weakly typed language, that's kind of dangerous because maybe you set let to a string, and then later on that same variable is reassigned to a number. But there's a function you have that expects a string. Bad things are going to happen. And JavaScript also has a lighter tolerance for errors. So sometimes it'll just continue running and not actually throw an error in certain cases, and then it's going to get weird. So I exclusively use const, but you know, when you see Richa or Nico teaching, you may see them using let. That's an opinion of mine, but yeah, that's why you're going to see us using different things probably. Anyway, so const variable name, I'm going to call it name equals Mike. So I just created a string. The type of this is a string, but again, it's just a const. So you want to also try and name your variables in a way that tells you what they are. So, you know, intuitively, when you see the word name, you can probably assume it's a string, right? But if I put in like something else, like I can't even think of anything right now. Well, actually, when we get into objects and arrays, that'll be a good one to go over. But that's a string. The next type would be, I don't know, salary, and I make $1 million a year. So this is a number. Well, specifically, this is an integer, and this is a float, but that doesn't matter in JavaScript. To JavaScript, this is just a number. So it doesn't get as granular as other languages do. It'll dynamically figure out how to process this information. Whereas in Java, if you want a decimal place, you have to declare it as a double, if you're familiar with Java. And if it's not, if it does not have a decimal, then you have to declare it as int. JavaScript, it doesn't care, which I think is awesome, because that means I can also do operations against numbers that have a decimal. Whereas in Java, it would not let you do that. You can't multiply an int by a float or a double. It doesn't let you do that. You'd have to cast it, which is a pain. But JavaScript, you don't have to do it.
Like,
Yes.
I've never used VS Code before, but do you not have to end like your lines with semicolons, or does it automatically like no?
So that's optional. And that's a JavaScript thing, not a VS Code thing. So other languages like Java, they do require a semicolon at the end of the line. JavaScript, it's optional. This is where ESLint would come into. If you decide that you don't want any semicolons at all, then you can configure ESLint to get rid of them for you. And this is something we'll talk about in a future lesson. But whichever you choose, just be consistent, because it's kind of annoying to see code that some of it is semicolon and some of it isn't. But yeah, good question. So what's another data type? Object. So an object in JavaScript, my object is denoted, and this is something that makes JavaScript fairly unique among other languages. It's got JSON, which is JavaScript object notation. And objects are, in Java, it would be like a hash map or a dictionary, sort of. But in JavaScript, it's built in, and this is actually kind of persistent throughout the JavaScript ecosystem. We're going to be using objects a lot. So an object would be something like maybe an employee. How's that? So an employee record, an employee record would be something like, what's their first name? Mike. So when I add a piece of information to an object, I would name whatever the key is. So first name, I'll just type in first name. This is the key and this is the value. The key is first name, the value is Mike. So if I have a bunch of these with different values, they should have the same key if I'm doing the similar stuff with it. And then I can add multiple keys, and they could be of all different types. So I could put age, and I've been 27 for 3 years now. And I can put in, all sorts of other information, and I can even put in a nested object. So I don't even know what I would name it. So I'm just going to put some object. And now I have a nested object that has more values in it, and it can nest. I don't know what the actual limit is, but you can nest pretty much infinitely, but try not to do that if you can avoid it, because nesting objects is asking for pain. So yeah. Now, inside of this employee, I'm also going to add another key for an array. So an array would be, I'm going to put in an array for infractions, because I get yelled at a lot. And an array can be, so this goes into the weakly typed thing, and it also goes into potential errors that you could run into. But again, in other languages, I'm going to compare this to Java a lot. An array, all of the members of an array is a list, right? All of the members of an array typically have to be the same type. But in JavaScript, it doesn't. So it's perfectly legal to type in a string, and then a number, and then an object, and then an array. And of course, I have to have commas. I forgot to mention that about objects. You have to have commas after each and every one of these. And Node doesn't care if the last item has a comma or not, but quote unquote proper JavaScript, or not, quote unquote proper JSON does not have an ending comma. And also quotes. And this is an opinion thing. I just use single quotes because I don't have to hold shift down to type them. But some people like their code to look like this. Again, it does not matter. Node does not care. So yeah. So yeah, those are the types. And like I said, arrays, you should try to keep them the same type if at all possible, because you're going to run into some weird crap if you do this. because when you write functions, it won't be clear what is going on until you actually try to access them. And once you access them and run functionality against them, like if you run something that a string uses that a number does not have, then it's going to throw and they're not going to know why it happened. So if you need differing data like this, you would want to use an object to store that information. So I'll just get rid of this. And I want to get into if statements, ternaries, all that fun stuff. So I'm going to type in why const numbers equals 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to show you if statements, and at the same time, I'm going to show you for loops. So a for loop is, there are multiple ways to achieve a loop or running the same block of code multiple times in JavaScript. And it's the same as, again, if you've seen Java before, all of these will be identical. If you've seen C++, it's identical. JavaScript is a C-like language. So all the syntax, almost all the syntax is carried over from good old C and C++. So, which is awesome because once you learn JavaScript, transitioning to Java, another C-like language, or well, C, is going to be a pretty easy transition. So let's see, there's for loops, there's while loops, there's do while loops, and there's also the map function, which is something we're going to be using a lot more, especially for React. React likes map, it does not like for loops. So, but we're just going to go over the for loop and all those anyway. So for, I'll just type this out and explain it. All right, so what I just did is I created a for loop to print out every member of the numbers array up here. So when I run this in, and you know what, if you don't want to use a separate terminal window, this is pretty cool with, that's I'm pretty sure built in with VS Code. You can go to terminal, new terminal. And it's going to look weird for me just because this formatting doesn't work with VS Code, but if you have a laptop with one screen, then this is going to be really nice and you don't have to switch between two different apps all the time. But yeah, that's the terminal. So when I run this code, it will print 1, 2, 3, and 4 in different lines. And so a for loop, there's 3 components inside of this, inside of the parentheses. Let X, oh, forgot to do that. And this is a let because this value has to change. So this has to be a let, or I suppose a var. I think let is the newer one, so use that one. But this is the iterative, or rather the iterative. Iterative means that this is the current index that we're on. And of course, index, an index of an array is the place in the array. So this is the first item, right? So what's the index of this?
0.
0. So yeah, I was hoping to catch someone off guard with that one, but indexes always start at 0. So this is actually the 0th element. This is the first, this is the second, this is the third. But yeah, what this is doing is it's counting up, and we're going to use X as an index. It'll exit, this is the exit condition. So the exit condition is as long as, or I suppose this is the continue condition really, but as long as X is less than numbers.length, it's going to continue. And because I would put, less than or equal to, but because of that whole index thing, I don't want it to get to 4, because if it tries to access the 4th element, it's going to fail because there's no 4th. Well, it's not going to fail. It's actually going to print undefined, which is quirk of JavaScript. In Java, it would just say array index out of bounds. But there's no such thing as that in JavaScript. It'll just return undefined, which is annoying sometimes, but feature, not a bug, I guess. And then the last thing is, I forgot what it's called, but this increments, I guess the incrementer, this increments are iterative after each run. So on the first run, X is going to be 0. It's going to check, hey, do we continue? 0 is less than numbers.length, which is 4. Great. It'll run the code inside of here. And the last thing it'll do is increment, and then it'll do it all over again until this is no longer true. So when I run this, and by the way, to run a JavaScript file using Node, you type in Node and the name of the file. And you do have to be inside the folder. So if this fails for whatever reason, first thing you should do is an ls. Because if I do Node, I'm just going to go up one folder, node index.js. It's going to be like, what is that? I don't know what that is. Module not found. And that's because I'm in the wrong folder. I see that often, so that's why I'm saying it now. Node index.js. So it printed 1, 2, 3, and 4, just like I said it would. And also, I'm going to do this so you can see that when I try to access the 4th element, it's going to give me undefined. It's not going to throw. It's just going to say undefined. So that's something to be mindful of. Whenever you're accessing a piece of data, perhaps inside of an object, if you're accessing a key that doesn't exist, it's going to give you undefined. If you access an array element that doesn't exist, again, undefined. So that's something to know because that will definitely be a cause of bugs in the future. But yeah, that's the for loop. Now the while loop is a different way to achieve a loop. In a while loop, we have 5 minutes left, so I'm going to speed through this. Again, this is a refresher. A while loop is something that'll continue until whatever condition I put in here is false. So I'm just going to put in true. And because this value will never change, it's just going to keep doing this until the sun burns out. Now, if you get caught in a position like this and the program just won't die, you can use the interrupt. And on a Mac and a PC, this is going to be the same. Control C. That is an interrupt. That tells Bash or PowerShell to just kill whatever program is running in it. So that's what that is. Now, I'm going to comment this guy out. So this is kind of going to do the exact same thing as this for loop, but while, and I can put in stuff like int, not int, what am I doing? Let x equal 0. And at the end of this line, I'm going to put x plus plus. So while x is less than numbers.length, and I'll just leave hello, so it'll print 4 times, but I'm achieving exactly the same thing as this for loop. But this isn't really what while loops are for, but for lack of a better example, this is what we're going with. And again, we're not going to use while loops all that much. So it doesn't really matter. But if I run this, it's going to do the exact same thing as this for loop. It's going to check the condition, is x less than numbers length? 0 is, yep, cool. Print hello, x plus plus will change this to a 1. It'll check the condition, run. And until this gets to 4, this will continue to run, right? And if I run this now, nothing's going to happen because the condition is already false. So set it to 0, boom. The last one that I'll go over, and then we'll go into map, I guess, next lesson because we're already at an hour, but the do while loop, I did that wrong. So the do while loop, and I'm not going to write any code in here. I think y'all get it, but this will run at least once. No matter what. So if I were to actually set x to 4 and console log hello, while x is less than numbers.length, even though in a regular old while loop, it just wouldn't run any code inside here. A do while loop guarantees that it'll run at least once. It'll run this code and then it'll check the condition. Boom. So no matter what I set this to, I'll set it to 40. It'll run at least once. Cool. All right. And unfortunately, that's all we have time for. But what I want to get into now what I want to get into next week will be, this is an hour, right? It's not an hour and a half.
It's hour and a half, Mike. I was just waiting for you to stop. We started at 5 and we go until 6:30.
Perfect. So we can go into maps. So what was I saying? So a map is something that's it's a little more modern. It's considered functional versus well, not really object oriented. For loop isn't object oriented, but anyway, map is a way to achieve a loop, and there's actually a couple of different functions like that, and they're called higher order functions, and I'll explain why in a moment. But a map is a way to achieve a loop and actually change data inside of that loop. So you could use it just to loop and console log something out, or you can use it to actually change something about the data set. And this is something we're going to see a lot. In React, you do kind of have to do a lot of data manipulation, particularly if you have a list of items or an array of items that you want printed out onto the screen. Once we get into actually making an app that runs in Chrome, and it's an indeterminate amount of them especially, then you're going to want to use a map. So I'm going to write this first in kind of an old, I guess the old style, using a for loop, and then I'll write the same thing using a map, and you're going to see how much better it is. So I want to go through this array and create a brand new array, but each item will be mind freeze. Each item in this new array is going to be whatever this number is times 2. So the goal is to create a new array 2, 4, 6, 8. Now with a for loop, that's pretty easy, I think. I'm going to create a new array, and this is kind of contradicting what I said earlier, that a constant can never change. That's not necessarily true. Things like objects and arrays can be altered, but if I try to, and I'll just comment this out real quick, const something equals 4. If I set this as a constant and I try to reassign it, something equals Mike. When I run this, it's going to say, yeah, no, you can't do that. Assignment to a constant variable. However, if I were to set this to a, I'll just name this times 2. If I set this to an array and I use times 2.push and I push in a new element, it's actually going to work. Look at that. So that's something that's kind of weird with JavaScript that I don't think was intentional, but at this point they can't change it because it would break a lot of apps. So that's something to keep in mind. So you're going to see me set this as a constant, but anyway. Again, if I'm going too fast, stop me. So I want to fill this array with 2, 4, 6, 8, the multiple of 2 on each of these. So the way I would do that in a for loop is times 2.push numbers, the x element, times 2. So when I print this out, I'm looking at 2, 4, 6, 8. Awesome. Now in a map, and this isn't a great example, this is going to be pretty much the same amount of code, but when we're working with objects, like an employee list or something like that, and we want to get everyone's name out of that list, then this will be a lot more useful and save you a lot more code and complexity. So we're going to do the exact same thing in a map. So map, there's a few of these: map, reduce, filter, sum, find. There's a bunch more. We're going to be focusing on map. We're not going to look into reduce just yet because this one's confusing, but we'll look at filter. So these functions are known as higher order functions. It's because they are functions that take in other functions as parameters. That's something that, well, Java does that now, but that's something that's fairly new for most programming languages that do it. Functions are assignable to variables in JavaScript. So I'm going to create a function and I can pass it around just like any other variable, which when I first learned about that, it blew my mind, let me tell you. So I want to create just a function that will only operate on one of these elements. It'll multiply it by 2 and return it. So const multiply by 2 equals, and this is a way to declare functions in JavaScript. So technically, this is an anonymous function that I am setting to a variable. There's two ways to do this. There's function multiply by 2. Yeah. So this is a more familiar way to do it. And you can see too that VS Code is not yelling at me right now because it's considering these two different, actually, it's not two different types. I can't remember why it doesn't care, but if I try to make a second one, why isn't it underlining?
Yeah, it should say it's already defined, right? Can you try running? Let's see if it complains.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is it not? That could be an ESLint problem. I don't know why that's happening, but oh, never mind. I was wrong. So this is considered a variable as well. So never mind. But those are two different ways. I prefer this way, just in general. It's really up to you on whether you want to declare a variable like this or using function syntax. It really doesn't make any difference. There is a difference, but it's not really, I don't know what word I want here, but it doesn't make any difference, really. There's a difference, but it makes no difference, is what I'm trying to say. So this is the name of the function. Obviously, you're setting it to this here anonymous function is what this is called. It's not anonymous anymore because I'm giving it a name, but that's what this portion that I have highlighted is called. In these parentheses will be our input parameters. So in this case, I'm just going to name it num as a number. And this function is going to just act on one of these and multiply it by 2 and return it. So return num times 2. That's all it does. 2. Oh, well, you know what this is going to say. It's going to spit out 4. So now I'm going to use map. Map will take whatever function I give it and apply it to each item in the array. So I'll also go full screen so we can see the entire file. So numbers.map. I'm going to give it multiply by 2 as a parameter. And what I'm telling this to do is specifically on the numbers array, it's going to take each member, it's going to input into this function and return the result. Those results will then be given to a brand new array. So const times 2 equals numbers.map multiplied by 2. When I console log this times 2, and I'll put in a little something here to distinguish it. These two do exactly the same thing, except this one is in, well, it's in the same amount of lines right now, but I'll show you how to condense this a little bit, especially if you don't plan on using this multiply by 2 function ever again. So we've got the first one with the for loop. It did the same thing as our map. Is anyone confused on what just happened here?
I'm not confused, but I'm having trouble getting my terminal working because when I type like node index.js, like it doesn't really do anything. And I know you said it earlier, but I kind of forgot at that point.
Same thing with mine.
Okay, so both of you go ahead and close your terminals and then reopen them because maybe your installation was done while your terminal was open. So it doesn't know that it's there.
I think you need to restart your computer for Node to work.
You should not have to do that.
I already had these both downloaded.
You did? All right. I'm going to give you permission to share your screen. Let's see what's going on. Who was talking?
Gracie.
Gracie. All right. You should actually already have permission. Can you see the share button? It'll be a green share screen button at the bottom of, right, there it is. So let's see. What does it say when you try to run it? Oh, you don't have any console. Oh, no, you do. Okay, well, it's not giving you an error, so that's weird.
We just try node version if that's available properly.
Oh, you
Okay.
got it.
Chain.
Scroll to the top of your, oh, you know what? That's something else I forgot to mention. Your index.js is not saved. So you see at the top index.js, and there's that little dot. Yeah, now if you run it, you should see it.
Okay.
Boom.
Yep. There you go.
Okay, so on mine, I have autosave on. That's why I can type and just immediately run it. Let me see if I can figure out how I did that. Autosave. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna share my screen again. Was that your, who else was talking? Was that your problem too?
Yeah, that helped. Thank you.
All right. Cool. Yeah, so to enable autosave will just continuously save it. So again, on a Mac, Command Shift P, on a Windows, Control Shift P. Type autosave and click this. I just turned mine off. But yeah, if you see this dot up here, then that means that it's not saved, but I never see it because I've got that turned on, and now you shouldn't either. So just remember to save before each run, I guess. So is anyone confused on how map is working right now? Like, does this make sense? Because it is a weird concept. It's taking each element, it's running this function, and then it's returning the result to the brand new array. And you know what? That's another thing. It does not alter the old array numbers. So if I run this again, I see that the old array is still 1, 2, 3, 4. Map does not alter the original array. And neither does the way I have this, actually, which I could make it alter the old array. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Oh, push. No. Whatever. Never do this anyway. I don't know why it's not working right now, but it's the wrong way to do it anyway, so. Oh, because it was using ×2 like an idiot. Okay, so yeah, it does not alter the old array. And same can be said about reduce, filter, sum, find, etc. And there's more than this, but these are the ones on the top of my head right now. So now to condense this, because maybe I'm never going to use this function again. And in the case of map, that's kind of pretty much how it works. I want to access an element like, name in an object or something, and we're going to make an object and do map again. So you can see where it can become a lot more useful than just multiplying some numbers. But I can make this, make all of this just one line of code. Now, remember when I said that this is an anonymous function? That means that this itself, as it's typed as a literal, can be passed into the map function as a parameter. And by the way, map is not the only function, or these are not the only functions that are capable of taking functions as parameters. I don't do it a whole lot. So honestly, I only ever do it with MapReduce, etc. But it's possible to do it with functions that you write yourself. And it's just as simple as, I can make num a function if I wanted to. It would do weird crap with this, but yeah. So let's just look at multiply by 2. We can make this one line by itself. If it's just one line in this function, I don't have any other stuff that I'm doing, like, const multiple. I'll just do m num ×2, return m. So that's what I mean by multiple lines. But if I only have one line of code with the return statement, then I can get rid of these brackets and the return statement, and it becomes an implicit return. It means implicit as in it's suggested that it does the thing. So I can get rid of return, but these brackets means that because there's no return statement in here, nothing's going to happen. So this is going to come back as all undefined. But if I get rid of these brackets, it is now a one-liner. And now we got our 246 back, 2468 back. And to go a step further, again, I'm never going to use multiply by 2 ever again. I'm going to copy this function literal. So when I say literal, I mean when you declare a value, a literal would be, the value for Mike, etc. This is a string literal. This is a number literal. So I'm going to take the function literal, replace multiply by 2, get rid of this. Never going to use it again. Boom, does the same thing. So I'm passing in the function literal in our map. So this is supremely useful. This is great for extracting data as well. Or you can, alter the data in some way, like you need to multiply by 2 or whatever. So I'm going to do this now with a list of objects, get a little more real world. So I'm going to get rid of all of this. I'm going to declare an employee list, employees. And this is another thing that I like to do often to distinguish arrays from other things. Because again, once I write this and maybe I import it into another file, it's not immediately clear that this is an array. That's one of the downsides of a weakly typed language. So I like to name arrays plural. So employees, even if there's just one in here, it still tells me that it's an array. That's just my personal thing. And employee, this could be a string, but it could also tell me that it's a single object, right? So employees. So each employee object is going to be something along the lines of name, Mike, age. I'm actually 29, gonna be 30 this year. I already know which knee is going to be the bad knee. What else do I want in here? Title, software engineer. And yeah, that's all I need right now. I'm going to add, here we go. I'm going to add a second one for Richa. I'll leave the age because I'm not going to ask because I know that's a bad idea. And title, also a software engineer. We'll put senior software engineer. So we got 2 different job titles. I'm going to adjust the ages so that, stop taking focus away from me. I'm going to adjust the ages so that those are different. Now I can use the map function to extract individual elements from this array. So I want all of just the first names of my employees. So const first names equals employees.map. And the iterative can be named basically anything. But I would just put like employee. A lot of developers just put X. And so each one of these, as it's iterating through, is going to be X. But I just like to name it for, what this object actually is, what it describes. So employee, and I want to extract the name. So employee.name. So it'll create a brand new array of just the employee names. Boom. Everyone understand what's happening here? Still good? Like silence is we're all still good. But yeah, that's where the map function really shines. And we're going to be using the map function as well, like I said earlier, where we create different elements in our web apps to show, information. Like maybe I'll have a web page that'll show like employee cards or something. And this function here would return an individual card. And then because it's a map, it's going to return a card for each item in this array. So now let's go with, I want to do reduce, but I'm going to go with filter next. Or you know what? I'm going to do find. Find's an easy one. So find is another higher order function. It works almost identically to map, except it doesn't create a new array. It finds the first element in the array that matches whatever condition is in here. So not condition, but I'll just start doing it and explain it. So const employees named Mike. So actually, yeah. is employee named Mike. So that's actually this is what I was trying to figure out before. So Boolean equals true. So JavaScript does have Booleans, true and false. Forgot to mention that, and it's obvious, but so is employee named Mike. So a function that starts with the word is typically tells me that it's returning a Boolean, either a true or a false. So I'll make this function and I'll condense it later, just like I did before, but it's going to compare name to Mike. Return name Mike. Now, this may look weird to some of you if you're familiar with other languages, but triple equal in JavaScript does have double equal, but there's also triple equal. And double equal will not look at the types. So if I'm just gonna comment this out real quick. I'll show you in a console log. So if I compare 1 to string of 1 with a double equal, this is going to come up true. True. If I put a double or a triple equal, it's going to come up false. And that's because these types are different. This one is a string and this one is a number, right? So I exclusively use triple equals myself. But you know, maybe if you're comparing barcodes or something and they're typically all numbers. I mean, if you have to use a double equal, then you're probably doing something wrong. Again, it's weakly typed, so we have to be a little bit more, what's the word I want? Disciplined in our code base. We don't want a case where we have to use a double equal ever, but it's here just so you know. Shut up, Siri. Siri searched for Selena, and I don't know why. But anyway, this will return true or false if the employee's name is Mike. And what the find function does is, yeah, I'll just comment this out. What the find function does is it'll go through each array or each item in the array, and it'll stop at the first one where the parameter function returns true. So there could be multiple Mikes, and this array could be sorted in any number of ways. So it'll just come up with the very first one. So how your array is sorted will matter with a find, but find is typically used for something like IDs. And IDs, like ID numbers, are, you know, if you're doing it right, are typically unique. So maybe my employee ID is 1234 and reaches is 4321. Find is best used on things that you know are unique. Employee IDs are going to be unique. Names are definitely not going to, especially mine, are not going to be unique. Titles, etc. So if you only need the one item, you can do const employee named Mike equals, what did I name this? Employees dot find employee. Oh, wait, I wrote a function for that. I almost never write functions like this and then give them to find. I usually write them explicitly, so my mistake. But so now it's going to go through each one. Oh, and you know what? I need to actually do this. No, I don't. So there's actually a problem with this, with what I just wrote. This is not going to work because it's going to take, it's not going to extract name and compare it. It's going to take the entire object. So this is actually going to end up getting assigned a name. So this is actually going to come up as, I don't know what's happening. First names. Oh, I had that map from before. There we go. And I'm not, so log employee named Mike. So this will come up on define because it didn't find anything. And the reason is because, and I'll console log each iteration, name ends up not being what I want it to be. It's the whole object. So what we actually want to do is change this to employee and do employee dot name equals Mike. So now when I run this, it's going to return this entire object because it's a match. There we go. And if it doesn't find anything like it did before, then it's going to return undefined. So I'm going to change this to meek, run this again, and we're going to see it comes up undefined. So this is something to consider when you're using the find function. If your code depends on something actually being found, then you need to have something to denote that whatever it is doesn't exist and to handle that. So if employee named Mike, so I'm putting a bang in front of it. So if employee named Mike is falsy or undefined, undefined is a falsy value, so is 0 and false, and I think that's it, then this bang will inverse it. So if I do bang false, this statement will be true, and it'll run whatever code's in here, right? So employee named Mike, bang undefined is true. So in here, I'll just have code to handle it. Not going to get too in the weeds there, but that's something to know about the find function. And again, I can condense this. Get rid of the return, get rid of the brackets, copy this function literal in here, and get rid of is employee named Mike. Whoops. Boom. So that's the find function. What else is in here? Gotta type these out again. Map, reduce, filter, find, sum. We'll go with that. So sum is the exact same thing as find, except it'll return either true or false overall. So find returns the actual value. Sum will return true if there is a value that meets, whatever this here conditional is, and false if it doesn't. So I'll just change this to sum. I'll just get rid of that. And this would be something like, is there a Mike? How's that? So because this very first element is going to cause this function to return true, sum will return true. If, however, it can't find any employees named Mike, it's going to return false. So sum is also pretty useful, and this one doesn't have that weird, undefined thing that find does. So you can use this just to evaluate, is there a value like this in this array? Not something that comes up super often, but it is very useful when you do need it. It's awesome. So now we're going to wrap it up with filter. And I'm going to put in two of myself in here. So I'm going to return all of the mics, and I'm going to change the other mic to a senior software engineer. So I want to see all the employees whose name is Mike. I would use the filter function, and I can even use this exact same function because filter, the input parameter function that filter needs should return either a true or a false. So I could just change this to filter. It'll do exactly what I want it to do. It'll go through each one of these elements. If this returns true, it's going to keep the element. If it returns false, like it will for Richa, it will exclude it. Mics. So when I run this, I should see two entries, one for the first mic, one for the second mic. We do not see Richa. And again, if I change this to Richa, same thing. We're just going to return an array of just Richas. So yeah, that's the filter function. So those are the simple ones. Next week, we're going to start with reduce. Reduce is going to get really stupid. I guarantee you're going to be confused the first time I run through this. It's guaranteed. It confused me for a long time before I finally figured out how to use it. But reduce is a very powerful function. It's map, it returns an array. Filter, it returns an array. Find returns a single item, sum returns whatever. Reduce can return whatever you want. It can add up a bunch of numbers and come up with the sum. It can do all sorts of cool stuff. It is something that I would suggest you look up recursion for. And again, recursion is also really confusing. But if you look up recursion, and I will start the lesson with a recursive function, so you can see what that even is. And then I'll use reduce, and but but yeah, recursion itself is kind of confusing. So this isn't something that you're going to be, just to remove the pressure. Reduce will not be something that you're going to be required to understand moving forward in this class. But if you do understand it and you know how to harness it, it is a very powerful function that will save you a lot of code potentially, or add a lot of code in my case. So yeah, are there any questions? Is anyone just completely lost right now? Or, does anyone want to stay after class and maybe get a little bit more individualized attention? Let me know.
So they all return arrays except for reduce, or reduce can return whatever. Like
Reduce can return anything, including an array. Sum returns true or false. Find returns just a single object or a single member of the array. Map and filter are the only ones that absolutely have to return arrays. Good question. Also, there are more of these, but I can't remember what they are. There's a ton of them. Any other questions? Is there anything in the chat?
No, we are all caught up, I believe. Yep.
Cool. All right. So again, if you have any questions, I'm going to be monitoring Enrique as well as going to be monitoring the Slack. So if you got any questions, you can DM either of us and we'll be happy to help. Most of the time I will, and I'm sure Reach as well, will be able to stay after class. Is Nico in here? I keep saying you and I, but I'm not saying Nico.
Nico was here last week. I'm not sure why he didn't join us today. He didn't send any message, yeah.
But yeah, Nico as well. So message any of us or post it in Advanced Web, because if you have a question, chances are someone else has the same question and we'll be more than happy to help. And then I also have PDFs that I will make available to you. For this one, I'm doing different code than what's in, well, of course it's not loading, but I'll post this PDF. There we go. I'll post this PDF for you to read through. I didn't hit absolutely everything in here. We didn't talk about scoping yet. We did talk about types. But yeah, go ahead and give this a read as well. If you need a refresher on what we just went through. Yeah, we'll see you next week.